Today in this part 3 of my Frigate NVR series, we're going to talk about creating actionable notifications on your phone or tablet or device using the blueprint from Hunter JM. It also allows you to view clips and view snapshots, also pause notifications within the actionable notifications, and we're going to create a dashboard that displays picture glance cards of your Frigate activity and gives you the ability to turn on and off the automations and gives you a flashing custom button card when activity is detected. So let's get started. Now that you have Frigate up and running by watching my last 2 videos and you've got zones and masks set up, what can you do to get notified when there's an event? So today we're going to talk about that a little bit. The first thing we're going to do is talk about the Frigate notification blueprint that's written by Hunter JM. There's no point in me reinventing the wheel here, so I figured we will just use the blueprint. You need to make sure that you have HACS installed as a Frigate integration, or it's not going to work for you correctly. If you've not used blueprints before, what a blueprint does is allows you to take and create a template of sorts for your automations. And with Frigate, it makes it nice and easy for you to build out automations based on notifications that come into your camera system. So let's go ahead and install the Frigate notification written by Hunter JM, the blueprint. So I'm going to do this on my test device just to show you how to do the blueprints. So you go to configuration and then come down to blueprints, and you are going to import a blueprint. So by clicking on this blue button right here. And with that blueprint, you need to go over to the site or the blueprint site where you have that. And there's a whole community repository of blueprints. In this case, this is Hunter JM's Frigate notification.yaml blueprint. And there is a URL that you copy. So you just copy the URL up at the top of the screen here. We'll just copy this URL. And we will put that in our blueprint, the URL of the blueprint. So I'll paste that right here. And I'm going to preview the blueprint. If you click on preview blueprint and it shows you the actual blueprint preview, then it's working correctly. If you get any other kind of error, either you don't have the right blueprint URL or the blueprint doesn't work correctly for some reason. So once you look over this, understand what it does, and it's what you want to do, in this case it is for us, we'll just go ahead and import the blueprint. And so now we have a blueprint in which we can create automations from. I don't have any cameras set up and Frigate's not running on my test system. So let's go back over to my main system here, my production system where I am running Frigate, and let's create an automation. So I'm going to go to configuration, automations, and you can either create the automation from the blueprint or you can create an automation and then select the blueprint. So we're going to add the automation here. So here again, there's a blue button. So we'll click on that, add automation. And we will use a blueprint. And I want to use the Frigate notification blueprint. So I'll click on that here. And I will call this demo. You can call it whatever you want to, demo. And I'm going to put AAA at the beginning. So it shows up the top of my automation list because I have a bunch of those and I don't want to search for it all the way through. All right, so the blueprint to use obviously is Frigate notification. And you can read through a lot of this information here. It will send notifications to your device when a Frigate event for the selected camera is fired. The notification will initially include the thumbnail of the detection, and then after a moment, it will update to include the actionable notification. So you can either view the snapshot, if you have snapshots enabled, view the clip, if you have clips enabled, or you can even silence the notification for a configurable amount of time, and you configure the silence within the automation. So with this blueprint, you can also send notifications to multiple devices by leaving the device field blank farther down here. So what's required? You must have a Frigate camera name, and you must have your mobile app or device or the name of a notification group. There are some optional features, and these are the features that I find most useful to this setup because this is how I use it. You can limit the notifications to objects entering any predefined zones, and we talked about in my previous video setting up zones and masks. You can specify which zones to be notified about, and this will be a list. You notice a dash here. The dash signifies it's a list. You can also specify what type of objects to be notified about, and this is also a list. So if you only want to know about person or car entering the zone, then you would just set those to be in this list and it would work. You can also disable notifications if a presence entity or group is home. So if you have presence detection set up, you can do that. You can configure a cooldown for the camera to reduce number of notifications when back-to-back events occur. Again, that's a helpful scenario if you have someone running in and out of the house or running around and they're going to trip it a bunch of times. And you can also silence future notifications for a defined amount of time through actionable notifications. How do we set this up? All of this is built out in the template that is part of the blueprint. So all you have to do is specify the items in the fields that it requires, and then your blueprint is set up. No YAML coding is required in this case. So you're going to want to select the Frigate camera. So the name of the camera is defined in your Frigate configuration, and that's the name of the camera you saw me define in my previous videos. So let's just call this one Driveway. That's the name of my camera. The device must run the official Home Assistant app to receive notifications. So you have to select a device. So I only have one, that's my phone. So I will select that device. That's where everything is going to go to from this blueprint, the notifications. You can create a notification group if you want to do that. I'm not doing that in this case. And then there's an optional base URL. Now this gets a little bit tricky, and I haven't had to do this. I've read a lot about folks having issues with being outside of the local network and not being able to view snapshots and stuff like that. This may require some experimentation. But if you read it here, the external URL for your Home Assistant instance, this will default to a relative URL and will open the clips in the app instead of the browser. So experiment with it, leave it blank for now. And if you need to set it, then you set it to your external URL and see how that works. There's an optional zone filter toggle here. And we do want to turn that on because we want to make sure that we are only sending events for a zone. For me, there's a lot of traffic and my camera on the driveway faces the street. So there's a lot of people walking up and down that sidewalk out there. I don't want to be notified every time somebody walks down the street. I do want to be notified if they get closer into where my house is, and that's where I have the zone set up. Again, check that previous video. You'll see where I set the zone for the driveway. So I do want to set a specific zone name. And again, that zone name is the zone name that you set in your frigate.yaml file. And it doesn't give you a drop-down. You'll need to know the specific name of the zone you created, and you can always specify that in the frigate.yaml, or you can always check that in the frigate.yaml file where you specified that. So in my case, the name of my zone is driveway close in. And then optional trigger, and make sure, again, this has to be a list, so we'll have to put the little dash right there. And then the trigger objects are the things you want to trigger on. I don't care if a cat walks through there or an animal or anything. I do care if a person walks through. So I want to specify a person as my object to trigger this alert. So let's back up and take a quick look what we're doing here. On the driveway camera, as configured in your frigate.yml file, I want to know, first of all, only if a zone area has been triggered or an object has entered the zone. So I turn that on, and then I specify the trigger zone or zones. You can have more than one zone in this list. I just want the driveway close in zone, and I only care if a person has entered that zone. And then the optional presence filter is an entity to tell me whether or not I am at home or not. I'm not using that, but you can. If you have presence detection set up, then you can tell it not to alert. It will stop the alerting if this particular presence entity or this entity is considered in the home state. There's an optional cooldown. So this is a delay before sending another notification for this camera after the last event. It's set by default to 30 seconds. I'm going to bump it up to 60 seconds. And then the optional silence notifications. This defaults to 30 minutes. You can increase or decrease this value. So what that does on the actionable notifications, there's an option to silence notifications. If you click that, it will not send you another alert for this automation, this camera, for the time you set here, which will be 30 minutes. Once you've set up all that stuff, then you just save it. And now we can go back to our automations and we can see that we have AAA test or demo frigate notification is set and ready to go. So anytime a person enters that zone, you're going to get a notification on your device. So let's talk about something that I discovered while I was doing the testing of this. If we look at the code for this automation or this blueprint, we can see, and I'm not going to show the entire code, but there are some conditions here. And these conditions determine whether or not this will fire. Now, this took a lot of time to figure out. And let me tell you what was happening first. I would get alerts for items outside of my zone, no matter what I set. Now, I can't tell you exactly why this is occurring, but what I found out is that if you get an alert in your zone, it sends a zone list. So if you look at this, we'll just briefly talk about this. You have an entered zones list. This list of entered zones is the zones where someone has to be in order for the alert to trigger. If someone walks out on the sidewalk, my entered zones is blank. However, what it's sending instead of a nothing, it's sending two brackets, an open bracket and a closed bracket. And because it's doing that, for whatever reason, the length of the list becomes greater. This was greater than 0. So this used to be set greater than 0, which means if the zone sent from Frigate is if there's anything in that list, it's considered greater than 0, and this particular condition will be satisfied. So it was sending a blank zone, and maybe there's a zone name or there's something going on where it's sending a blank instead of an actual name for the zone, for the area outside of my zone. What I finally figured out I had to do was set this to 2, because what it does, it counts those two open and closed brackets as 0 and 1. So anything greater than 2 will now trigger the alert. And it took me about a week of playing around to figure this out. So if you're getting alerts outside of your zones, go in here, go to blueprints in your configuration, come down to Hunter.jm, and then click on frigate notification.yaml, and you'll go into zone select. If it's in entered zones, then it's greater than 2, send the alert. You may not even have this issue, but if you do, and it's alerting outside your zone, check this out and see if that's an issue. So next up, let's talk about building a little bit of a dashboard that shows us what you can do with these alerts and have some sort of visual indication of what's going on as well. So if I go into my current set of dashboards, I have one called Office Tablet, and this is where I keep this up most of the time. I have 3 things that are related to the NVR. The first one is a set of camera pictures here. These are picture glance cards, and these picture glance cards will stay black and white until there's an alert on one of the sensors, and then they turn colorful and show me what the alert was about. Second, I have a couple of custom button cards that will start flashing yellow whenever there is an alert that occurs. And then third, I have the ability to control the automations that we just talked about. I can turn those on and off if I need to. Sometimes it gets super busy out in front of the cameras, and I don't want them to continuously send me alerts. I can also turn these on and off based on presence detection, or even automations. If I have the alarm armed, that's when these come on. When I disarm the alarms, I can turn these off. But I wanted a button that I could use to turn them on and off as well manually. So I just toggle these on and off whenever I need to. So let's go into building the dashboard. I'm going to go into my current dashboard. I've already got a blank view set up, and I'm going to edit this view, and I'm going to start adding cards to the view. And the first card I want to add is a grid card, because I'm going to build this out in grid cards. Now, grid cards are a whole nother subject, and I have a complete video on building an entire dashboard out using grid cards. Grid cards are an easy way to build kind of columns and rows on your dashboards. And so I use those on a regular basis. I'm going to set some options here. I only want one column for the starting. I do not want to render them as squares. I want them to be whatever they're going to look like. And so that's the top level grid card. And then I'm going to build a second grid card here. That's going to house my other stuff. And don't worry so much about this. What I'm going to show you is just the picture cards and then the other cards that are necessary. So this particular card is also going to be one column, and it's going to have a picture glance card. So I'm going to click on picture glance here, and I'm going to fill in the stuff that I need to fill in. I don't need a title because it just takes up extra real estate. I don't need the image path. I do need a camera entity. In Frigate, whenever you create an object to be monitored by a camera, that becomes its own entity and its own camera entity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that camera entity that I want. And for me, it's only a person. If a person arrives within the camera view, that's when I want to be alerted. I don't need to know about cats or dogs or anything else. So this particular card, this picture glance card, will just be if a person shows up. So I'm going to say camera, and then in the case of the driveway, I want a driveway person. And you can click on these if your browser works right. Mine doesn't. I can't click this and make it work. And so you can see a camera driveway person image. The action, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, but what does matter is you want us to be able to change from black and white to color, then you need to specify a binary sensor. So I have a binary sensor that I use for this camera, and it's the same as the person detection object. So it's driveway motion. So I'll say driveway person motion. You can see it there. Again, I can't click these for some reason in the Chrome browser. It doesn't work right. Anytime this binary sensor is activated, the picture glance card will turn to a color view, and anytime it's not, it'll be black and white. Kind of gives you a visual indicator of when there's actual activity on there. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, we've saved our picture glance card, which you can see here. Now I want to add a couple of other cards. This is nice as it changes color whenever the sensor is on, but I also want to have that custom button card flash in my face and tell me there's some activity there. So I'm going to add another card, and it's going to be below the first one, and I'm going to create another grid card. This time I'm going to create a grid card with two different cards side by side, just for spacing. And you can build this out however you want to, make it fit into your existing dashboards, etc. So I want two columns, and I don't want them square. And I'm going to add in first a custom button card. Start typing custom, scroll down here, and you'll see custom button card. It doesn't fill anything out for you. It doesn't give you a visual editor for the custom button card. It just allows you to put code in. Since I've already built this out, I'm going to go ahead and copy my custom button card, and I'm going to paste it in here for us to use. And I will explain what it is that it does. So here's the code for my custom button card. And I've got to fix a few YAML issues here. This has all got to line up. So I'll do some magic. Using Control key and my left bracket, I'll slide all this over. And if it's correct, you'll see the card show up here, and you won't have any red text on here telling you there's an error. So let's go through the card code real quick. This is, of course, a custom button card. The entity is the binary sensor driveway person motion. So the only time this is going to be activated is if there is a person, the person object has been detected on my camera, not just in the zone, but anywhere in my camera, because I'm not specifying a zone, although you could do that. And then, of course, the icon is a motion sensor. The color type I just said is a whole card. It's going to make the whole card change colors. Starting with an opacity of 70%, it just kind of dims it down a little bit so it's back out of the way in my visual spectrum. And then the height, I make it 160 pixels. I've done that on the dashboard that I showed you a minute ago because it fits in there just perfectly. The name font size is 14 pixels, and the color is white. So this looks kind of grayish, but it's because the opacity is 70%. It would be a whiter color if it was 100% opacity. So that's the card as it's statically set. If the state of the binary sensor we set up here changes to on, then this style is going to apply. The background color is going to be yellow because I really want that to pop out. The opacity is going to go from 70 to 100%. Again, pop that out at me. And then I apply some animation, and you can do this in your custom cards. The animation is going to be a blink, so it's going to blink on and off every 2 seconds. And then the word ease makes it just kind of slowly blink on and off. So it's going to be like this pulsating blink. And then it will do it infinitely until the state changes from on to some other value. And because white text on a yellow background is not visible, in white anything actually, I change the color of the icon to black so it's more visible. And let me move these over where they belong. I also changed the font size to 14 pixels, so I just make it 14 pixels. And then the name on the card, this, will also turn black because you can't see white text on yellow very well. Black text on yellow background is very visible. So that's how I do that card. And you can see it here. If I save this now, you'll see that I have this card here. And I just realized my camera wasn't on this whole time, so I have now turned my camera back on so you can look at my mug here. Okay, I've added now this flashing custom button card. I want to add one more card that's going to allow me to turn on and off an automation like I showed you on my main dashboard. So we'll go ahead and edit this because I created a grid card. I actually have a spot over here to place the other card. So I'm going to add a new card, and I'm just going to click on button here. This is the button card. On this card, I'm going to select the actual entity that goes in that button card. And it's the automation that I set up. You can choose any of your automations, but it's the one that I set up for the driveway, my actual, not the demo. And I'm going to put in motion driveway new only. The name, I'm just going to give it driveway. Otherwise, it'll put the entire name of the automation in there, which won't fit on the screen. You can choose the icon to whatever. I'm going to leave it as robot. Show name, yes, so you can see what happens when I toggle these. Show state, it's currently on. And then icon, I keep the icon on there. It makes it look more presentable. The icon height in pixels is optional. The theme is optional. The action you're going to want to toggle because you're toggling the automation on or off. And then if you hold it, it gives you more info, although I don't know what it shows. And then I want to save it. And now you can see that I have this here. Let's get out of the editor. So what will happen now is you will have this icon show up if a person ends up in this field of view or is detected in the detection area of the camera that you have set up in your Frigate.yml. And this allows you to turn off, by clicking it, the automation that sends you alerts for, in this case, this driveway camera. So that's how you build out the things that I showed you on my Office tablet. I just put 3 of them side by side, 2 of these cards side by side, and here we are. You can see now that there has been activity on the driveway, and it'll show that flashing. And what happens here is this card is now turned colorful, telling me that this is where the activity is, and you can see what's going on out here. It's detected a person out in the street because it's looking at this entire camera view to get object detection. And that's how that works. Just happens to be very coincidental that it happened while I was displaying this so you can see what happens. And this will stay alerting until it actually switches back to an off state, that binary sensor. And you can see here that this has switched back now to black and white because it's no longer an active alert. So that's how we do the Frigate notification on our phone, devices, tablets, whatever you have set up, or notifications groups if you want to. And how you can see those clips and snapshots directly on your phone or your tablet device. In addition, now you can create custom dashboards to kind of do whatever you want with the dashboard and display these alerts. In my final Frigate video, I'm going to talk about WebRTC and how you can display the cameras using the WebRTC setup. I have not been able to reliably stream my cameras using any of the glance cards, the picture entity, the loveless cards, but I have been able to do this very well in WebRTC, and it looks really nice. I can use the full resolution streams and view those in different groupings, front, back, all cameras, etc. It's a good drop-in for the way I was using Blue Iris to show me all the cameras just in real time so I can see what's going on around me. Let me know if you have any questions. This is video 3 again of the Frigate series. Watch video 1 on how to configure Frigate initially, video 2 on how to create zones and masks, which I reference in this video, and of course this video on how to set up some notifications and some actionable things. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments. Hit me up on Discord. If you're not a channel member, I'd love for you to become a channel member. It helps support the channel. And then subscribe, of course, and we'll see you on the next one.